Hi guys, my name is Deborah. Welcome to the Courageous Church.
And I'm Aaliyah. Thanks so much for spending part of your weekend with us, especially if it's your first time to be here.
One of the best ways to grow your relationship with God and others is to surround yourself with people who will encourage, challenge, and remind you that you're not alone in whatever is going on in your life. That's what small groups are all about.
Today, after this worship experience, is our small group mixer where you'll have a chance to meet all of the small group leaders and find a group that best fits you. We have groups for men, women, married couples, and students. So whatever phase of life you're in, we have something for you. Here at TCC, we joke that we're relationally intense, but it's because we care, and we want you to feel needed and known. So don't miss out on this. You'll also be able to find a directory of small groups on our website.
We also want you to find your purpose here at Courageous, and you can do so by going through the growth track, which are 3 easy steps. Step 2 of growth track is today at 11, and once you complete the 3 steps, you'll be part of the dream team.
This is a team of people who've decided to make the Courageous Church their home, and they've found an area to serve in that they're passionate about. From greeters to ushers, from the worship team to hospitality, these people have discovered their purpose and are making a huge difference. Join us today for Growth Track. We'll have childcare and refreshments. Head over to the info desk if you have any questions.
Create Night is back, and it's happening September 19th at our North location at 6 p.m. On this night, we'll be highlighting videography, photography, and production. We'll have a time for group discussion and then have breakout sessions where you can learn more and grow your knowledge in these areas. We hope to see you there.
You can keep up with everything Courageous on social media. Make sure and check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter so you don't miss a thing.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. We believe that you're here for a reason.
Please let us know if we can help out with anything or answer any questions while you're here. We hope you have an awesome week.
So glad you're here. Welcome to the Courageous Church. My name is Tyler. I'm a lead pastor, and today we start a new sermon series called Enemies. And today I want to talk about enemies. What an exciting topic. You know, many of you want to think about that, but it's something that we deal with, something we face. And so today I want to talk about why we have them. They serve a purpose in our life, okay? And so Jesus told us this would be the case, and I want you to get it in your head that there's going to be forces that oppose you, people that don't like you along the way. And so Jesus told us in Matthew 10:22 this, you'll be hated by everyone because of me. That's a good one. Take that and get it printed on maybe some t-shirts or, like I've said before, some coffee mugs and just, walk around the office sipping that and looking at people with a knowing look, like I know why you are the way you are. Matthew 10:24 is Jesus' instruction to us about how things might go for us sometimes. And it says this in Matthew 10:24, the student is not above the teacher. So we're not above Jesus is what it's saying, okay? Nor a servant above his master. It is enough for students to be like their teachers and servants to be like their masters. If the head of a house has been called Beelzebub or a devil, then how much more have the members of the household been called that as well? What does that mean? Well, if you look at Jesus' life, he had opposition. People hated him. People slandered him. People talked about him negatively. And so if we're going to follow Christ in some ways, at some times, there's going to be people that turn on us. There's going to be people that stand up to make your life difficult. There's going to be people that lie about you or accuse you falsely or work against you. There's always going to be people that don't like you and maybe even hate you, and so we kind of have to be ready for that. There's going to be people that lie on you, people that sabotage your work, people that work against your future, people that try to discredit your contributions, people that try to, in many ways, undermine your relationships and become enemies. And so the real question is, why do we have them? Why does God think that enemies are beneficial in our life? and the truth of the matter is enemies can happen in ways we didn't expect it. Like you don't expect the person you fell in love with to turn on you and the relationship to fall apart, and then you're sitting in a courtroom dividing up your stuff and saying the worst possible things about each other. That's what divorce does. It's terrible. People you love can become enemies. The worst kind of enemy is when a brother or a sister or a mom or a dad, something snaps and they become an enemy to you. Like, people are people, and we live in a fallen world, and so at times there's going to be tension and problems related to our relationships and people not liking us. But when it happens, understand that God can use all that. And it's not wise to equate, like, because that person is my enemy, they must be God's enemy. That's not the case always. God may be working in their life. So today I want to give us some perspective on why that happens. Look, I didn't expect people to hate my guts when I decided to follow Jesus. I didn't expect people to not like me. I didn't expect people to oppose me, really, when I decided to follow Jesus. But oh, was I wrong, and enemies happen along the way. And so when you become a Jesus follower, it doesn't give you an exemption from people disliking you. 2 Timothy 3:12 says this, in fact, everyone who wants to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. There's going to be people that stand up to make your life difficult. 1 John 3:13 says this, do not be surprised. Don't think it's strange. Don't be surprised, brothers and sisters, if the world hates you. And so God is pretty much guaranteeing us there's going to be times of relational tension where enemies present themselves, where oppositional forces come against us. And so today we're going to look at how enemies make us better, and we're going to the life of a man in Scripture named Joseph, all right? And he's got an amazing story, and it shows us how enemies work, what their motivations are, and then on the back end, it kind of shows us how God can use that for good, okay? And so let's go to Genesis 37, verse 3. Here we go. Are you ready? If you're ready, say yes. If you're really ready, look at the person next to you and say, I use Crest for my dental needs. What do you use? And then analyze and see if that's a legitimate choice. And if it's generic, just give them kind of a snide look and let's move on. Okay. All right. So Genesis 37:3. Now, the Bible says Israel, who was Joseph's dad, his dad was named Israel. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons. Ooh, dysfunctional family already. Dysfunctional families produce resentment, okay? And so Joseph was loved by his dad more than any of his sons because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. This is where the Technicolor Dreamcoat was invented right here. This son that was like more than the rest got a special garment that said number one son in some ways. Like it was a thing that just bred resentment from his other brothers. And so families were dysfunctional back then. Dads shouldn't do that. And kids shouldn't react negatively, but stuff happens. And so this shows us exactly one of the big reasons we have enemies on the earth. It's because of jealousy. Say jealousy. It's a dirty word. It doesn't feel good to say it, but because of jealousy. Jealousy opened up all kinds of stuff in Joseph's life. And back in the Bible days, there was drama. There was hatred. There was all kinds of tension. And enemies presented themselves to Joseph from his own family. And when enemies come, they can come from people you didn't expect it from, people you were accountable to, people that have some degree of power or say in your life. And they can even be people along the way from the internet that you don't know. But jealousy will definitely cause people to hate you along the way. And it's because they don't like you. It's because they're jealous of what you have. They're jealous of your success. They're jealous of your skills. They're jealous of your family life. They're jealous of you. They want your job. They want your relationship. They want your family. They want to be like you. And so because of that, they're jealous and they become an enemy. So jealousy creates enemies. We got to look in our own lives and not compare ourselves amongst ourselves. We don't want to become enemies to other people. And so when jealousy starts to get a hold of you, push it down because you have a race to run that's yours. Don't compare yourself or your race to anybody else, okay? And then In the life of Joseph, we can see another reason why we have enemies, because of dreams and goals. When you have a dream, when you have a goal, when you decide not to live a life that's just like everybody else's, that just conforms, when you're doing something, enemies will present themselves. Here's what Genesis 37:5 says about Joseph. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. They hated him because he had a vision. He had a dream. He had a goal. He had something inspired from God, and this caused them to hate him. It goes on in verse 19, and when he would come, they'd be like, verse 19, "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Come now." And this was their plan. This is how a family can turn on one. This is a sad, sad story. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." Jealousy and the hatred people have for the vision, the dream, the passion that you have in your life can cause them to hate you. There are people that don't want you to move forward. There are people that will work against you moving forward, obeying God. There are people that want you to fail. They're pulling for you to fail. They are haters. They are enemies. This is something that we don't like to talk about. Like, be positive, Pastor. I'm being positive. I'm positive you're going to have enemies at some point. I remember when it happened to me, I was shocked when people, I had times in my life when people got together. I was already a pastor. People got together and had prayer meetings that I would get cancer and die. And I had people lie about me in the workplace when I was very young, and I was shocked by it. There are people that just hate what you stand for, and it doesn't feel good. And people, it comes to a root, One of the biggest reasons why we have enemies is because of selfishness. Like, Joseph's brothers wanted to be loved the way that he was loved. They wanted that for themselves, but they resented his love that he had coming from his dad. And so they sold him off. They decided not to kill him. They sold him off into slavery rather than kill him, which is just as terrible in many ways. And he ended up in Egypt working for a leader named Potiphar. Okay, so he goes to this guy named Potiphar's house, and he's working, and Potiphar's got a wife, and she's bored during the day, and she looks at Joseph like he's the pool boy, and she tries to entice him to be with her, and he's like, no, 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 and she is very ticked off by this. She's appalled that he said no to her, so she accuses him of raping her. And here he is, this slave boy. He has no influence. He can't get an attorney. There's no public defender for him. And so Joseph was thrown in prison. So here he is, the slave boy, thrown in prison because of an enemy, because of a lady who was selfish and had sin up in her heart. And she just turned around him. Sometimes bad stuff happens to you because you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I don't have good reasons for that. But know that we all have selfish enemies that act that way because of their sin. And if we're honest, we can say that we may have hurt others in that way as well. And so this selfishness caused them to want to justify their mistakes. And so in order to justify her mistake of trying to make Joseph her special friend, welcome children, glad you're here, She made him look bad. She tried to make him look bad to make herself save face. And they twisted the story to cover up their sin. And in doing that and in getting involved in this big mess, I'm sure Potiphar and his wife had problems. I'm sure there was all this junk going on. And Joseph was an innocent bystander. But in order to cover their dysfunction, they involved him. That's what enemies do. Like, some enemies are just wackos, and then other enemies are just wicked, And so it's going to happen, and enemies are an unavoidable part of life. The goal in this series is not for you to rid yourself of enemies. It's to teach us there's a right way to respond to all the tension. Like, we got to learn to respond to our enemies in the right way, because here's the big key. Your response to the injustice, Your response to the hurt, your response to the way people treat you, your response will determine your reward from God. Like, here's the thing about enemies. They cannot stop the track that God has you on. Enemies cannot stop your success. They can delay your destination, but they can't deny what God is doing because God's fully in charge. So remember always, the battle is not yours. The battle's the Lord's, all right? And so how do you respond to these things? Like, how do you respond when people hate you? How do you respond when people are against you? I'm dealing with it in my own life. How do you respond when people that are supposed to love you actively try to hurt you over and over again? I don't have great answers for it, but I'm trying to help you and help me. And here's the first thing I know. 3 right responses to enemies. We got to get better, not bitter. I refuse to get bitter. I refuse to put my life in a place where the acid that people throw at me gets into my spirit. His brothers, Joseph's brothers, hated him. They wanted to kill him. But rather than kill him, they sold him off. And you never, ever see Joseph getting bitter. Like, he ends up as a slave in Potiphar's house. He's not bitter. That woman lies on him, accuses him of something terrible. He's now a sexual offender, and he's in the prison for it, and he's not bitter. It's easy to start out loving people. But as experiences and time takes place, there's always a temptation to protect your heart and to get yourself in a position where you become cold and hard and detached. No matter how you started, we all have to make the choice when offenses come our way and people treat us poorly to get better and not bitter. Because when you get bitter, you start returning hate for hate. When you get bitter, you start returning hurtful words for hurtful words. Bitter people are mean. Bitter people lash out. Bitter people are angry. They're rude. They always blame others. They fall into the path of victimhood. You can either choose to become bitter or better, and I'm going to choose to become better. And so what do? Well, along the way, we have to have a thick skin that's been given to us by knowing who we are in Christ, and then we have to have a tender heart that causes us not to quit loving people. Folks, every time somebody leaves the church, I grieve their loss. There's some streets in this city I don't drive down because it affects me emotionally when I see where somebody used to live or an experience that I remember. And I'm not saying I'm the healthiest dude here. I'm not saying that at all. All I'm saying is I want to keep a tender heart. Because the more you get hurt, the easier it is to say, never again, never again, never again will I reach out to anybody. Never again will I expose myself to anybody. And I told a small group that I meet with, I cannot grow you by filtering our interaction. I have to give you clear understanding of why and what and how to influence leaders. Well, it's that way in any relationship. Your relationships can't grow when you're protecting. So we got to keep a tender heart towards people and a tender heart towards God. And choose not to get bitter. And when I was preparing this sermon, I just had a huge reason just to get bitter, to lash out, to be angry. And is everything right inside of me in relationship to those things? Nah, it's probably not. But I didn't act on it. Like, you can feel all kinds of things. And whether Joseph felt anything at all when he was in the prison, when he was being accused falsely, you don't ever find him complaining about it or talking about it or trying to get other people to believe in his innocence, really, until the very end of the story when God is opening a door. Like, it's important that we don't get bitter, we get better. The next thing I can tell you, when you're dealing with enemies and oppressors, and maybe it's like an employer who just takes credit for your work or disparages you in some way on the job, just work, don't worry. Just work, don't worry. Here's what Genesis 39:3 says. When his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did. This is what is happening, okay? So in spite of all the reasons he had to be upset and to make excuses and to get distracted by the trauma and the pain he was experiencing, he decided, I'm just going to put my head down and take care of the thing that God has put in front of me. I'm going to work and not worry. And because of that, David found favor with God. He wasn't saying, my life stinks, I've been lied on, my brothers are at home, everything's good for them, I'm going to mope around, I'm going to be lazy, I'm going to be sad, I'm going to be inconsolable. No, he didn't do that. He just said, head down, I'm honoring God, I'm doing what he's put in front of me. I trust God with the details of my life. Somebody say amen to that. I trust God with the details of my life, and so I'm going to be faithful right where I am. That's what Joseph was saying. So he took care of business. He gave his best effort. He said, I'm going to prosper where I'm planted. The Bible says, he that is planted in the house of our God will flourish in the courts of our Savior. Something like that. I think I turned two words around. What am I trying to say? Just be planted and trust that God's working out the details. So here's what happened now. After he was falsely accused by an enemy and ends up in prison. Genesis 39:20. Joseph's this has got to be a humiliating. I mean, think about all the humiliation. Sold on a slavery auction. Now he's being delivered into the prison by the man who inevitably thinks that he tried to rape his wife and she fought him off. Joseph's master, this is very humiliating. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. But while Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. This guy, who was now considered to be a sexual offender, if something like that happened to you or happened to me, I think it'd be fair for us to think, how can this be a part of God's plan? And how can God possibly use this? I am completely discredited, right? But Joseph didn't spend all his time worrying about that. He worked, he didn't worry, and he was faithful where he was planted. And some of us need to hear this because there's so many of you, you're pleading your case, you're trying to get people to understand why you feel the way you feel. You keep checking the Facebook and the posts about you on the internet and all this. Listen, don't be worried about the haters. Don't be worried about the enemies. Don't be worried about your brothers. Don't be worried about Potiphar's wife. Don't be worried about the Egyptian legal system. Don't be worried about retaliating. Don't worry about defending yourself. Just trust that God is in charge even when it looks like he's not. God's in charge of my life even when it looks like he's totally not. Like, make up your mind. God controls my destiny. And so the right response to enemies is get better, not bitter. Work, don't worry. And then the next one is this. Just stay rewardable. Like, live the kind of life that God can still bless, even though you've taken some hard knocks. Like, if we learn to respond in the right way to our enemies, it actually positions us to be blessed and rewarded by God. Like, your response will determine your reward. And over again, the Bible says the Lord was with Joseph. The Lord was with Joseph when he was being sold by his enemy brothers into slavery. The Lord was with Joseph when he was being falsely accused by Potiphar's wife. The Lord was with Joseph when he was in a prison. And you're thinking, well, if that was what it's like, if the Lord's with you, Lord, stay away. I don't want any of that. But there's a bigger purpose in all of the tension you're experiencing. There's something powerful happening. It goes on to say in verse 2, over and over again, I just want you to see it, 39:2. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When the master saw the Lord was with him, and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did. Listen, even when you're being treated poorly, God's hand can be so heavy on your life that people just notice it. People just know there's something different about them. There's something unique about them. I feel good when I'm around them. There's something special about them. God can be with you in all of that. And so undoubtedly Potiphar's wife thought she had won. The brothers of Joseph thought that they had done so well in removing that problem. But all along, while he was not getting bitter, and while he was working, and while he was keeping a heart that honored God where he could receive the reward of God, Joseph still prospered. Your response will determine your reward. And even if you're in a really tough spot, if you'll honor God right where you're at, and believe and know God knows right where you are and has a hand in helping you. You're going to respond right and just trust that God's purpose is being fulfilled. Not respond in the wrong way. God can still bless it. But if you get bitter and you just start flipping out and running your mouth, and if you get bitter toward God and you don't receive the rewards that God wants to place in your life, you just become mean and hateful and nasty and complaining and whining, retaliating, always have a snide thing to say. Like, God can't bless that. We're all going to deal with very, very difficult circumstances. But God will work when you learn the right way to respond to your enemies. Like, why, God? Why did you allow, seemingly, these enemies to do better than me? I mean, Joseph had every right to ask that. He never really did, but you would think it like, God, why does it seem like they're winning and I'm losing? Well, God allowed enemies to seemingly win in Joseph's life to accomplish a lot of different things. First off, it took out that pride that he used to have when he told his brothers how much better than them he was. It taught him how to serve. It taught him how to be faithful. It taught him how to be loyal. It challenged him in the areas of purity, and he withstood it. It prepared him to comfort people when they were suffering. It prepared him to lead his brothers. It enabled him to see God do stuff that he couldn't do for himself and build his faith. It taught him how jealousy can tear things apart. It taught him how to let God bless you and trust him to be the blesser over your life. It placed him in a position where he trusted God's power way more than he ever trusted the power of Pharaoh or his enemies. Listen, there's always going to be adversity in your life. A great preacher of another era named John Wesley, who founded the Wesleyan movement. Maybe you've heard of Wesleyan churches before. This is from his diary. I want you to see how this works, okay? He's writing in his diary. He's like, Sunday, a.m., May 5th. I preached in St. Anne's. They asked me never to come back. Sunday p.m., that same night. So he had such a good experience, he went again. Sunday p.m., May 5th, I preached in St. John's. The deacons told me to get out and stay out. Sunday a.m., May 12th, I preached at St. Jude's. They said I can't come back there either. Sunday, May 19th in the a.m., I preached at St. somebody else's. The deacons called a special meeting and said I couldn't return. Sunday, p.m., May 19th, I preached on the street. They kicked me off the street. Sunday, a.m., May 26th, I preached in a meadow. They chased me out of a meadow, and they released a bull on me while I was trying to have service. Sunday, a.m., June 2nd, I preached out at the edge of town, and they kicked me off the highway. Sunday, p.m., June 2nd, afternoon, I preached in a pasture, and 10,000 people came out to hear me. True story. Whatever has said no and whatever has worked against you has to bow itself to the hand of God that's working for good on your behalf. Here's what I know about my life and your life, okay? If God would have come to Joseph and been like, all right, Joseph, I'm going to make you the vice president of Egypt. And that's what happened. You're going to be over all the food, and you're going to allow your family not to die because of this. Joseph would be like, I'm not ready. So God didn't ask him if he was ready. He just used enemy after enemy after enemy to back him up, to back him up, to back him up. And then one day, he turned around, and he was right in the place of a fulfilled promise. If God let you see everything he was going to do in your life right now, you'd be intimidated by it. You'd be like, no, I can't do that. But if the tension backs you down, and it overwhelms you to where you only have eyes for God and his help, you're focused on him, he'll back you right into where you're supposed to be. Many times God has to work in reverse in our life. That's what he did in Joseph's life. And all these harsh situations, and I'm in a bad spot this morning because I want to tell you everything that I'm experiencing. It has nothing to do with the church. It has to do with like family and stuff like that. But it's not really appropriate. But I'm living what I'm talking about, people. And understand There's not an enemy in the world. There's not a voice that's spoken against you that in any way should give you the reason to be bitter and to forget the goodness of God. Because God's going to fulfill it in reverse. And I've never understood. Like, as I've suffered and I've gone through stuff, and it's minimal compared to what so many others have gone through, I get it. But whatever your experience is your experience. I've wondered how God can use it. I stand before you today a much wiser individual because of it, telling you that God uses all those things for good. Enemies will work against you. They'll test you. They'll try you. They'll frustrate you. And then one moment along the way, just like Joseph, it all makes sense. When he stood and realized, I am now over all the wealth of Egypt, and I can save my people, all of it made sense. Every head bowed, every eye closed. Lord, there have been people in this room that have been tempted to take the bait of bitterness, the bait of frustration, the bait of just abandoning and walking away. But Lord, let everybody in this house know that their response determines their reward. Their response determines their reward. So Heavenly Father, right now, I'm asking that you would give us the strength and trust that we need to endure every hard thing so that your will would be accomplished and your goodness would be fulfilled in our life. And if you're thinking with me about all the stuff that isn't going right in your life and the people that have worked against you and it's frustrating you and hurting you, understand something. God uses all things for good, even the things that seem so bad that no good could come from them. I want you to know that the God that I'm talking about today doesn't put evil people in your path, but at the same time, those evil people and the lessons that you're going to learn will not be wasted, and your response determines your reward. So what will your response be today? Every head bowed, every eye closed. What will your response be? Will you turn toward God and say, regardless of what I don't understand, I'll still trust you? Or will you decide to take matters into your own hands and turn your heart away from God, to develop thick skin and a hard heart? Joseph never did, and God used him in a powerful way, and he'll do the same for you.